my fellow Americans.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to.
Who are shouting? Just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually, the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plan in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid. and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding disinformation? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
And it might sound radical, colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
We become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done, and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
You would know this this is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natali and I work very hard on it every morning over a cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email, and all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
You killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed 1 million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was still
already
in
done.
Parliament,
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the major's. The major's assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone, or to take the nation to war partway, or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, They get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me, and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." I said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, "I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show, but if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Well, one of the 4 principal functions of the CIA is to gather intelligence and ideally forward it to the president, the users of information, the policymakers, as they say. There are other functions, however, some of them more legitimate than others. One is to run secret wars, the covert action that's written and talked about so much, like what's happening in Nicaragua today from Honduras. Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist, you will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories. For example, in my war, the Angola war that I helped to manage, 1/3 of my staff was propaganda. Ironically, it's called covert action inside the CIA. Outside, that means the violent part. I had propagandists all over the world, principally in London, Kinshasa, and Zambia. We would take stories which we would write and put them in the Zambia Time, and then pull them out and send them to a journalist on our payroll in Europe. But his cover story, you see, would be that he'd gotten them from his stringer in Lusaka, who had gotten them from the Zambia Time. We had the complicity of the government of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, if you will, to put these false stories into his newspapers. But after that point, the journalists, Reuters and AFP, the management was not witting of it. Now, our contact man in Europe was, and we pumped just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs that made almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbunda women who supposedly had been their victims.
These were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort of totally false propaganda.
The only reason that I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
energy. Yeah.
Welcome in, everybody, to Redacted on this Monday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
And on this show, we are seeking the truth wherever it leads us. We don't have all the answers, but we're on this journey together, and we tend to cover the stories that mainstream media largely ignores, or they put a huge amount of spin and propaganda onto it. So we are navigating those stories tonight. We've got a couple of big stories we're going to cover for you. First of all, the developments over the past few days about the rebuilding of Ukraine and the amount of money that's pouring into Ukraine in order to build new weapons factories and rebuilding electrical grids and everything else. Who stands to benefit the most? Of course, it's Blackrock. But the amount of dead people as a result of this war continues to climb, and now Ukraine wants to throw women into the meat grinder. We'll go into all of that on the show tonight.
Plus, we're going to give you an update on the invasion of Haiti. A United Nations vote was scheduled for today on whether or not the United States gets its invasion. Remember, they have asked the United Nations for resolutions on war before and then just went ahead with it. The United States, I'm talking about Iraq war, maybe,
right?
Other wars. So how much does this mean? Does that mean a new war in Haiti? Also, Donald Trump was in court today. Is he getting a fair trial? We're going to speak to a legal expert on what actually is happening, not just sort of off the cuff reactions, but is this something that we should be afraid of because it means the rest of us may not be able to get fair trials if he can't? That's just a question.
Yeah.
You're going to have to come to this one, not on whether or not you like Trump, but what is fair and what is the law? Prepare yourself for that.
Also, we're going to talk about Serbia tonight. Many of you asked last week, hey, will you guys cover what's going on in Kosovo? Will you talk about what NATO is currently doing, trying to foment violence and basically create a war in Serbia? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. We'll do all of that and more as Redacted starts right now. Welcome into the show. If you are new here, I would love to hear if you're new. And longtime viewers, let us know in the chat room here on Rumble and on YouTube and on Twitter. Let us know if you're new. Just say, yes, I'm new. We're live Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and we cover the big stories of the day, geopolitics, and we tend to cover the stories the mainstream media doesn't. So just drop us a new down there in the chat room, and we'll welcome you with open arms. You're welcome here. We're all free thinkers. We're all free thinkers. And I love this. Dave in the chat over here on YouTube says, the news here is talking about Russia on the run. What is true? It's so funny because Dave, I don't know where Dave JM writes that on YouTube. Let us know where you're from, Dave. But earlier today, you and I were texting because in Europe, there was coverage of Russia on the run, right?
Yes.
So that's the story. But if you actually look at the line, the front right now, and this has been going around over the past 24 hours, the front has not moved an inch, not 1 millimeter. So all of these Ukrainian men are being thrown right into the meat grinder and just going up against a wall and being destroyed. So no, Russia is not on the run. And according to every analyst that we know, absolutely that's not the case. They're just patiently waiting.
No, the propaganda is ratcheted up to 11, especially as the United States' new government funding package excludes Ukraine. So then the West is wondering, is that the bottom falling out from our support? We're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, we want to tell you about our newsletter. That's another place where you can get the real news, original news, links to original sources. We write this newsletter every day that this show goes live. That's Monday through Thursday. All you have to do is put in your email address. It's a free subscription, and you'll get an email that looks like this and say, yes, indeed, I did intend to join the newsletter.
Yeah, it might be in your spam folder, by the way.
Make sure you look out for it, and then you're off to the races, and you are a subscriber of our free newsletter. Now, remember, this is a great place to keep links to original sources sources. This is a great place to see for yourself the things that we're talking about here, because it's never our intention for you to take our spin on something. We have no agenda whatsoever. We want you to be as educated and think for yourself as much as possible. So please do subscribe to the newsletter. It's redacted.inc.
Yeah, redacted.inc. Saul to Paul. Remember, we got in an argument last week. I think it was last week. Saul to Paul said something to you, or just said something. And then we got in a back and forth conversation with Saul in our chat about, well, we don't need to go back over it again, but Saul just wrote a message here on YouTube and says, Redacted Natali hates me.
No, I don't.
That's not right at all, Saul. We had a good back and forth discussion about it. And then you said, hey, thanks for updating me. Now I understand. And that's how conversation should happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we went had a, anyway. So no one hates you here, Saul.
I don't really hate anybody, but I'm so glad you're here. And I'm especially glad you're here because you had an opinion of me that we didn't agree on, and you came back. Yeah. So you might be my favorite for today.
Yeah. And hey, if you subscribe, your name will pop right up here on the big screen. So if you do subscribe, if you're new, welcome, and your name will pop up here and join the rebellion. All right, let's get into the news, shall we? Well, Ukraine has run out of men to die in NATO's war, and now it's turning to women and younger boys to fill the ranks. That's right. We'll get to that part of the story in a second. You can see this headline here: Ukrainian women to be conscripted as the country faces Russian forces. So put a pin in that. We'll come back to it in a second. Friday, though, something happened in Ukraine which got little fanfare in the West, almost no coverage of it whatsoever. The Western media was focused on the government shutdown and Trump indictments, of course, and largely ignored the story. The Associated Press, though, covered it because the AP, of course, is an extension of the military-industrial complex. Here was the headline: Ukraine hosts a defense industry forum seeking to ramp up weapons production for the war. So diving into this, Ukrainian President Zelensky held a meeting in Ukraine with 250 defense industry corporations from 30 different countries. You better get in while the getting's good. This is like, it's like going to Vegas, It's like, I don't know, what would be the equivalent here? I don't know,
It's like
lottery?
the song "Drop It While It's Hot."
Yeah, because a lottery
Get
wouldn't
it?
really
Like bombs
drop it
stuff.
while it's hot. Yeah, I guess. I was just trying to think of an equivalent. Like everyone's running for this big pot of money right now. Is basically what's happening.
It's a run on the bank. It's a wonderful life.
I can't think of it.
Okay, you don't like any of mine.
250 different defense industry corporations from 30 different countries, all warmongers who are profiteering off of war. They came there in order to open factories in Ukraine instead of waiting on weapons to be shipped from other countries. So Zelensky invited them, saying basically, we don't want the third party. We don't want to have to ask the United States for weapons anymore. Build them here and we'll get first dibs on them. That's the idea. And just open the factories here and we won't have to wait anymore on these weapons from these other countries, Germany, France, etc. We'll just get them right here. Zelensky called it an arsenal of democracy and an arsenal of the free world. Yeah. This is literally what he called it, the arsenal of the free world. As great anti-war journalist Caitlin Johnstone explains, Zelensky's speech twice made use of the phrase defense industrial complex and used the phrase arsenal of the free world no fewer than 3 times. Quote, Ukraine is developing a special economic regime for the defense industrial complex, Zelensky said, to give all opportunities to realize their potential to every company that works for the sake of defense in Ukraine and with Ukraine or that wants to come to Ukraine. So open up, baby. The floodgates of money are ready to rain down upon you. And Zelensky even tweeted the same thing. Here's his tweet. We held the first defense industry forum in Ukraine, gathering 252 leading defense companies from over 30 countries, North America, Australia, and Asia. Right now, the most powerful military-industrial complexes are being determined. So, when we use I don't know if he understands this, but when we use the term military-industrial complex,
it's a negative thing.
It's a pejorative. Yes.
Yeah, it's got a negative connotation.
But he's like, we're building the strongest military-industrial complex.
That's the world we don't want, guy.
Yeah, maybe you don't want that, but he's all in on it. Of course, he's right. I mean, he's not pulling any punches on this. The military-industrial complex wants nothing more than to turn Ukraine into a giant arms factory. That's exactly what they want. paid for with your tax dollars. Not just in the United States, of course, but in the UK, in Germany, in Canada. Your money is going to create these weapons and funnel them over into Ukraine. All of those countries I just mentioned doubled down on additional monies and weapons to Ukraine. So while your countries begin to crumble, Germany, United States, yeah, we're taking care of Ukraine. That's no problem. So the mainstream media in the U.S. is totally on board with this, as you can imagine. Here's the Wall Street Journal's amazing piece of journalism in support of the military-industrial complex. They titled this piece, "In Defense of the Defense Industry." And basically the crux of the article is that we should all be on board with these guys because these guys are keeping you safe. These guys, if we didn't have the Raytheons, the Northrop Grummons, and building all of these weapons and all of these aircraft and all of that Putin would literally be invading you. Those were his words, literally in the article. If we didn't have the military-industrial complex, these thugs, these hooligans, these tyrants would be invading you, and you would be less safe as a result of it. Of course, no one stands to make more money in this boondoggle than Blackrock, and Blackrock owns huge stakes in Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman. Isn't it amazing? I mean, they literally own all of these companies. These firms are the top recipients of Pentagon funds. As William Hartung reports, the weapons companies supported by Blackrock are also on the leading edge of the Pentagon's dangerous and unnecessary $1.2 trillion nuclear weapons buildup, which aims to create a new generation of nuclear bombers. Northrop Grumman, ballistic missile submarines, General Dynamics, nuclear warheads, Honeywell, Bechtel, and other firms, a submarine-launched ballistic missiles, Lockheed Martin, and more. Of course, but the point on the front end of this, just on the front end, which is the destruction of Ukraine and an extended war with Russia that experts predict will go well past 2030. You see, Blackrock makes money on the weapons, right? And they make money on the rebuilding. Basically, Blackrock destroys Ukraine and then also rebuilds Ukraine. That's a hell of a business model. How'd they get their hands in that? So they're making money on the front end, destroying Ukraine, and then they're making money on the back end, rebuilding it.
That's a double dipper.
I mean, talk about it. Wake up, people. I mean, seriously, wake up. Of course, Blackrock then owns all of the media as well. So in this scenario where they're destroying Ukraine and then rebuilding Ukraine, the media is complicit. It's supporting all of this. And all you need to do is turn on your corporate press to see it. I mean, here's Aaron Burnett. Basically, CNN anchors reminding you why it's good for Blackrock to make a lot of money from war because they're American companies.
It's worthwhile with all of this gaining, some steam and public perception to be clear on some facts. First and foremost, the vast majority of this money is going to American companies and jobs, right? Because those are the people who are making the Abrams tanks, the ammo, and everything else. And we take Lockheed Martin, which makes the HIMARS that have been core to Ukraine's counteroffensive. The company announced it's going to increase its workforce in Camden, Arkansas by 20% just because of this new demand. That money's going to America.
Yeah. Okay, that's what you call a transfer of government funds to private America.
Oh my God, that money's going to America.
We're going to kill people.
Yeah. Do you feel good about that? I mean, I like Daniel Edmonds writes a super chat, your $5 super chat. Daniel says, how is breaking into someone's house, killing their dog, stealing their stuff considered defense? We live in a clown world. Yes, exactly, Daniel. That is. Well, we are defending democracy. What's that?
I said, well, you're not going to get bit by their dog, so defense. Doesn't matter if the dog wasn't coming at you.
Right.
And it's not your house, and you just broke into someone's house and killed the dog.
We're all safer from said dog.
It is a clown world, Daniel. You're right. Blackrock famously bought millions more shares of Fox News back in January. And then, of course, a few weeks later, Tucker Carlson was fired after he ran this report on Blackrock. Why was he fired? Watch this.
So, of course, the war in Ukraine has totally destroyed Ukraine, killed over 100,000 Ukrainians, but it's still going. Why is that? Because the Biden administration has kept it going. They could have forced a peace. They haven't. They don't want to. Why is that? Why kill all these Ukrainians? Why destroy an entire country? Well, because people are getting rich. BlackRock plans to get rich. So BlackRock is now saying out loud that the war in Ukraine, the death of all these Ukrainians, is actually a great opportunity to transform Ukraine into a beacon of capitalism. Right.
Right.
So
George in the chat says it sounds like Halliburton. Like, oh, where have we heard this scheme before? It worked, right?
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with the Vice President Cheney's investment in Halliburton and how it relates to that war in Iraq, yes, pull the thread. Good point, George.
yeah, follow the 9/11 thread if you dare. We've got plenty of videos on 9/11 here on the channel that I encourage all of you to watch. In fact, a big video that we just did on the hijackers this past week with Kevin Ryan. Watch that. You can start to pull the threads on who stands to make the most money here. And then, of course, Tucker was fired after that. And do you see how the world works, guys? Like, do you see how BlackRock, do you see how these few firms that run everything, control everything? By the way, just a side note. Today, like if you go on Google and you just type in the Google search term BlackRock Ukraine, good luck finding all of the information that I just brought you here about how much money they stand to make, all of that. No. The first search result you'll get is from BlackRock's own website, blackrock.com, where they analyze the war in Ukraine. So the very first result, and then if you want to type even more results, more queries, BlackRock, Ukraine, money, scheme, anything like that. No. Good luck finding information. It'll be buried. Because, well, these large firms invest in all of the search results as well, and search giants, and in big tech. So good luck getting information. This is how the world works. Tucker speaks out about it, and then he gets fired. Because BlackRock buys up all these shares of Fox News Corporation. That's how it goes. That's what happens. So when you turn on your mainstream media, you're not going to get any kind of open, fair, honest discussion because they're all controlled. Even when you have these new anchors that fill in now for Tucker's spot and start, like, oh, they're really sticking it to the man. Remember who pays their paycheck. Just remember that. These corporate media hacks have their paychecks paid by these corrupt corporations that are running the world. And, this is how it all works. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of Ukrainian men have died in NATO's war because they don't care about Ukraine and they don't care about the men that are dying in Ukraine. Instead, Ukraine is getting so desperate now, they're calling in women to fight. Now, we warned you about this a few weeks ago, but now it's happened. October 1st came. Now the new conscription law in place as of October 1st. Ukraine has passed a new law on military registration of all women conscripts. It's now enforced as of the 1st of October. So they are ready to go. And the obligation applies to all Ukrainian women between the ages of 18 and 60. So the girls who've been partying at those Kiev nightclubs, you've seen all the videos of these girls partying, and everyone's wondering, like, why are you guys... Even Zelensky got angry about it and said, hey, stop partying. Stop partying, go fight. He yelled at these people at the nightclubs. Well...
I mean, they look like stone cold killers.
Right. You want those women.
Yeah.
You want those women on the front lines, especially in winter, right?
Right.
When it gets cold, there's nothing women love more than the cold.
Yeah.
Right? Wear that outfit out on the front lines against the Russian forces. So that's exactly what's going to happen. And of course, they've rolled out new recruitment videos over the past few weeks to get the women ready for what's coming in Ukraine, NATO's war. They need the women. They need more meat in the meat grinder. Watch.
Я просто жінка, грішна і свята, слабка і сильна, сіра і яскрава. Я просто жінка, просто жінка.
Yeah, so sign up now. And, the dirty little secret, of course, on all of this is what's actually happening underneath the table. Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe. And so many of the men, when you're seeing those nightclub videos, you're like, why are those young men still there? Like, how are they still there? Well, it's a little thing called money. When parents pay off the corrupt government of Ukraine, these men don't have to go to the war. They get out of it, right? They get either flown out of the country or they're able to hang out in nightclubs and they're part of the elite class there and they just pay some money, right? That's how it works. So will the women be able to also do that if they have money? I mean, I guess if their families have money, they'll get out of it as well. They can continue partying at the nightclubs. Even CBS News covered how the nightclubs in Kiev are booming right now. Nightlife in Kiev is booming, and it looks good for all of these wealthy kids of aristocrats in Ukraine. And I guess we'll see if they end up on the front lines. But here's CBS News and the nightclubs.
We welcome you back to CBS Mornings. As the war rages in Ukraine and cities are pounded by the Russian missiles, you may be surprised to learn that the nightlife in the country, well, it's thriving. The bars, the clubs, and the restaurants, they are all packed. Charlie D'Agata met up with customers and business owners to find out why the partying has not stopped.
Yeah, it continues to go. And so why are those young men sitting there just drinking beer, drinking whatever, and hanging out? Well, again, the money. So, again, we'll see.
But wait, CBS, didn't you tell us that the war was in Kiev?
Yeah, right. They're being bombed everywhere.
I guess we're not supposed to ask intelligent questions like, oh, wait a minute, why is that possible when you're telling us that it's war-torn and we saw Angelina Jolie running through the streets from shelling?
Oh, no, and Sean Penn, like he was ducking for cover.
Right.
Remember? It's like,
and
oh my
Jessica
God, it's a war zone. Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So, okay.
Well, the dirty little secret here for the women's side of this conscription is it's unlike the men. So the new law that went in on October 1st, women aren't allowed. Women can leave kind of freely. There's no restriction on them leaving the country. So I imagine Europe, you're going to see a lot of Ukrainian women showing up. Like a lot of young Ukrainian women are going to be, pouring around into different parts of Europe if those countries will allow them. So unlike the men, men are restricted. They cannot leave. If you're of military fighting age in Ukraine, you cannot leave. But women, still that law allows them to leave. So it'll be interesting to see how many of them are actually fleeing that country. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Go ahead, Philip.
I was going to say, who's taking care of the orphans then? Because if you're putting the both parents in the conscripting both parents, what about the kids?
Right.
Are they just like giant Ukrainian, or are they just next? Eventually, they'll just start arming kids.
Well, yeah, just today, a parliamentary member a politician from the UK said that Ukraine needs to lower the fighting age because too many men have died. So now, we enlist them. We enlist kids, go below 18. What does that mean? That's a terrifying thought. 16?
15? 14? I mean, if you can hold a gun, that's,
right.
Throw them out there.
Is that what we stand for in the West? Is throwing more and more people against this line of fire?
Yes, Natalie, that's democracy. When Ukrainian young boys die, they're dying for democracy. Right?
For our money-making war.
They're dying for our freedoms.
Meanwhile, just today, Karine Jean-Pierre from the White House said, well, if Putin thinks he can outlast us, he's wrong. We're in this for the long haul, signaling that the White House has a long appetite for supporting this war.
Oh, yeah.
With whose lives,
No.
I don't know. Meanwhile, NATO has admitted that Russia has gained more territory than Ukraine in the last year, especially since the counteroffensive. So what we're fighting for, one more time, it's always worth bringing up the map. What we're fighting for is a contested area of people who voted to become Russian, who asked Russia to come in and stop the attack from the Ukrainian army after Zelensky ordered the first escalated strike in 2021 and 2022. And Russia obliged because their parliament voted, even though Putin himself did not want it. The parliament did. They came in, put a surrounding perimeter around these people and are holding it after the vote, after they voted to become a part of Russia. So what we're saying in the West is we have an insatiable appetite that will endure to throw men against these lines so that Ukraine can get back in there and torture these people again.
So that's exactly right. So when
the
Biden administration says that they have a long appetite for this, you're seeing it that the year now that they're pushing this war for is the year 2030 at the least. So over the past week, the military people that went into Kiev to have this big military defense meeting, they're planning for a long war. They're planning for at least to the year 2030. And that's what you're going to start hearing. You're seeing newspaper articles that are saying we're in this for the long haul. This is going to be a long, protracted war. The Biden administration saying this is going to be for the long haul. So this is all an insatiable move, the insatiable appetite of the military-industrial complex. That's all this is. Follow the money. Follow the money. We've got more news to get to here on your Monday. It's Monday, and I see a lot of new people here. So I asked how many of you are new watching us. We're live every Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So good to see all of you here. Welcome. Glad to see you're all seeking the truth along with us. And you're sick and tired of the mainstream media. So glad to have you here. We are independent. We are not bought and sold by any corporation. We're just supported by you. So thank you guys. If you say you are new, just drop me a comment here in the description and the comment box, and let us know if you are new to the show, and we will welcome you. Good to see all of your new faces.
All right. Well, we're going to talk next about U.S. forces invading Haiti and who are they bringing with them. It's like a +1 to the war party. We're going to talk to Redacted correspondent Dan Cohen, who's been warning us about this Haitian invasion for months and months. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Indeed, because the thing about running your own business is that every single hire counts, and no hiring partner understands that like Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, Assessment, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Well, Indeed's U.S. data shows that over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Candidates that you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only just see it in search, according to U.S. Indeed data. So Indeed knows that when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count, especially in this economy. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that actually match your must-have job requirements. Indeed knows that hiring needs to be cost effective. So right now, you can visit Indeed.com/redacted to start hiring right now. Again, that's Indeed.com/redacted. We really appreciate their support of independent media, independent journalists like us. So they support us, and we would really appreciate it if you would visit this URL and support them. One more time, that's Indeed.com/redacted.
Well, Redacted can confirm that the United States has special forces soldiers in Haiti, as the U.S. has been pushing for an invasion of Haiti and may get its wish very, very soon. The United Nations Security Council will vote this afternoon on a resolution authorizing a multinational force into Haiti. Redacted correspondent Dan Cohen is in Washington with the very latest on this. Dan, what can we learn from this UN resolution today?
Yeah, Clayton. So the U.S. has been seeking a military invasion of Haiti since July 2021, when the president of Haiti, Jovenel Moise, was assassinated in a still unsolved mystery. And now the Security Council is going to vote on Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and it is likely to pass this resolution authorizing the deployment of foreign forces into Haiti. Based on my sources in the council, the U.S. has spent considerable diplomatic capital to get many countries on board with this, most notably with Kenya contributing 1,000 police officers. It also has gotten commitments from Spain, Jamaica, the Bahamas, Mongolia, Senegal, Guatemala, Peru, Italy, Antigua, Barbuda, Suriname, and the Bahamas. So it's like a coalition of the willing, which with, of course, the U.S. playing the main role, but trying to have these other countries out front in order to give it sort of an international legitimacy. I've obtained a copy of the UN Security Council resolution, the UN resolution, and it calls for a 12-month deployment, and it says that at 9 months that may be adapted or changed. Very notable, it says nothing about a mission goal or exit strategy. It says that the mission should develop and a strategy for conclusion and withdrawal. So there's not one there yet, and this is going to vote. So we're looking at a deployment of international forces under the auspices of the UN, which occupied Haiti from 2004 to 2017. But I can confirm that the U.S. already has deployed special forces to Haiti. I spoke to former Air Force Special Operations Command Airman Jean-Pierre Alfred. Take a listen to what he had to say.
I have a couple of friends that are within Army Special Operations Command that are currently deployed in Haiti as we speak, and they have been there for the last 30 to 45 days, cycling in and out. Their specific role is train, advise, and assist. And what that encompasses is training the host nation forces, making sure that they're providing a level of security for the key personnel within the Haitian government and also the American government. And then should the need arise, potentially to operate within a kinetic capacity, which means to integrate within your police forces, your military forces, and conduct raids and operations to take down some of these political factions and opposition gang members that Haiti has described as problematic.
So he's talking about U.S. Army 7th Special Forces Group, which is normally deployed throughout Latin America as part of Southcom. And these special forces, also known as Green Berets, will be training not only the Haitian National Police in general, but they will also be training a specialized force, an elite unit.
Within the train, advise, and assist portion of this, the United States military, specifically the Green Beret team, they'll be training a base level force that'll provide the stability for the regions that are currently under political strife. The other aspect of this is they'll train an actual SWAT team or a SWAT team-like component that'll be responsible for executing the raids and the warrants and the specific roundup missions where the goal is to gather this person or persons and bring them back for interrogation. And if they cannot interrogate that person or if they cannot round that person up peacefully, then typically the kinetic operation turns violent and they actually end up killing the person.
But these Green Berets won't just be training and advising. They can also be directly involved in combat operations on the ground in Haiti.
The chances of them just sitting around and assisting in terms of just guiding and directing, that literally never happens. They actually get down on the ground and they operate within that team. And you have to understand why. The reason for that is this is not as though it's some type of acting class or it's some kind of rehearsal. There's actually bullets flying in and out of an area. And once that bullet leaves the barrel of that weapon, there's no taking it back. So if you're on the ground as a Green Beret, you're not going to risk staying in the car and possibly getting shot. You're actually getting down on the ground and you're guiding how the outcome of that mission is most likely going to be.
Jean-Pierre Alfred also told me that there's quite a large number of these special forces on the ground and their command element, which is very significant.
To send an entire command element into Haiti would mean that you send the entire team of possibly anywhere from 12 to 55 men on the ground. And that also is going to include psychological operations, which are responsible for the media apparatus and making sure that the messaging is done properly. It's going to also involve the entire intelligence component, which is they're soaking up all of the phone calls, they're providing surveillance. You have ISR, which is the actual UAVs and drones that would fly overhead also. And then you have aerial components, which are your actual potential naval fighter jets that they can call from any naval carrier group that would be within the Caribbean that could get to Haiti within the first 12 minutes. When you take a look at that and that entire force posture, for them to have sent an entire command element into Haiti is almost the equivalent of using a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito. They are not looking to potentially guess. They want a specific outcome and they want zero margin for error.
Now, regarding this UN Security Council vote, he says that it's window dressing for U.S. plans that are going to go down either way.
It doesn't matter if it passes or doesn't pass. The United States has a goal in mind and it's going to execute that goal irrespective of the resolution. The resolution is only to give political expedience and political cover overall to say that the international community voted for this, but the United States has already had forces on the ground for the last 30 to 45 days plus. So the resolution that's being put forward, whether it passes or fails, it doesn't matter.
Now, one of the most important questions, who this military invasion might target, well, Alfred says this would be Jimmy Cherizier, who I've covered extensively here on Redacted and in my documentary, Another Vision. He is the primary target.
There's a variety of so-called gang leaders. We take the most popular one that we've heard, which is Jimmy Cherizier. He tends to be the figurehead that everyone knows. He's the one that the media has portrayed the most. So a gentleman like that, when you look at his profile, his pattern of life movements, essentially, when you look at his profile, you ask yourself, is this somebody that politically I can coerce and maneuver and steer in the way that I want? Because at the end of the day, the Green Beret team that's on the ground, their goal is not just to pull a trigger. Their goal is to actually take in, soak up, and absorb the host nationals and say, can I use you to my political advantage instead? Because to kill Jimmy Cherizier would mean that you cut the head off, and now the body doesn't necessarily wither. Now it's you have a group of individuals now that have no leader. And they're subjected to the political whims or potentially the financial whims of anybody who was willing to pay them. So Jimmy Cherizier in this case would be somebody that you definitely want to not kill if you can coerce him. However, if you can't, in this case, the Green Beret team would, or the host national forces or the Haitian National Police would make an example of him. And an example of him in this case would be to either jail him or unfortunately kill him.
So I was recently in Haiti, and one of the developments that we saw was Cherizier had signed a peace accord with criminal gangs that he had long fought, which brought many benefits to the neighborhood. Now, the question he's in, basically he's in a precarious position where he feels that he might actually have to ally with these criminal elements in order to have any chance of fending off, of resisting this foreign invasion. So essentially, he'd be making a deal with the devil, with criminal gangs, in order to fight off a bigger devil, this foreign invasion. But the problem with that, I think, is that one, he risks fulfilling U.S. government propaganda, which has been calling him a criminal, falsely smearing him as a criminal for years through a very extensive demonization campaign that I've thoroughly debunked in the documentary Another Vision. And we've also looked at a lot here with my reporting on Redacted. Secondly, he also risks alienating himself from the masses, losing popular support, and the people hate the criminal gangs who kidnap and extort them and murder. So if he loses popular support, that severely weakens him, and an invading force could come into his neighborhood much easier rather than having, crowds of people where he could sort of disappear into. And then third, those criminal gangs, those groups that he might ally with, are tied to the oligarchy. They are largely funded by the government and the oligarchy, the very same government and oligarchy that's bringing this foreign invasion in. They are mercenaries who might stab him in the back. Here is what Jean-Pierre Alfred had to say about that.
The aspect of it that's positive is that Mr. Cherizier now has a kinetic force or a violent force that if he needs to repel in a potential attack from the government, he could potentially do that. The negative aspect of this is that the very same people that he might be aligning himself with might also be the very same people that'll kill him. Because typically how this has gone, and how it currently functions in essence now, is the elite class of Haiti are paying many of these people to essentially act as mercenaries and act as a political instability point. And if Mr. Cherizier thinks for one single second that these very same people are aligned with him and that they have his interest in the short and long term, he would be making a deadly mistake for himself, because they will kill him.
So, Dan, I find it interesting that he basically says this UN resolution is just cover. It's a cover story for what the United States wants to accomplish. I mean, bringing in the troops, the forces from Antigua and Barbuda and other Caribbean nations, not exactly a massive coalition, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like getting, I don't know, what were like the tiny islands that Bush got in, the invasion of Iraq, and said like, oh, we have this massive coalition of the willing, all of these forces who are willing to, these countries who are willing to contribute these forces to take down this dictator. It has kind of a similar feel here, where it's really just a U.S. force. The U.S. has tried to get Canada to lead it. It tried to get Brazil. It's tried to get a number of countries, and finally it got Kenya, which has a notoriously terrible human rights record, including running death squads, actual death squads. That's according to the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights. So, I mean, this is setting up, I think, to be a real disaster for Haiti. and there's no exit, there's no timetable, there's no clear strategy in this resolution. So, I mean, if this goes through, I think it's going to be really bad news.
And I'll get you out of here on this, Dan, which is Jimmy Cherizier. You speak to him, regularly, of course, in your coverage and in interviews with him while you're in Haiti and from the United States. Have you spoken to him about these moves towards what appears to be an assassination attempt, moving towards his life?
Yeah, I mean, he has pledged to resist. He's the only so-called gang leader that says he would resist against this foreign invasion, and that Haitians would do so in general. But like I said, I think he's in a very precarious position. He doesn't have a good way to go here with this foreign invasion, because he's basically able to protect his small neighborhood from criminal gangs and expel them. But now with this foreign invasion coming, he feels like, well, I don't have a choice. I have to ally with these guys in order to fight off this foreign force. But by doing that, he puts himself in a very precarious position. So I don't know exactly what the right answer is for him. I don't think those criminal gangs are trustworthy. But a lot remains to be seen. Anything can happen, and Haiti does have a very strong revolutionary history and has made history before. So we're going to wait and see what happens.
I guess it's a precarious position, making the decision do I partner up with the United States, largely in many ways a criminal organization, or do I ally with criminal gangs? And maybe he's choosing the lesser of two evils right now to fend off this invasion and maybe stick to his survival. I don't know. It's a really delicate situation. So we'll keep our eye on what the United Nations does, what this coalition of the willing looks like, and the U.S. Special Forces, who are already in Haiti and leading this sort of forward planning, I guess, in Haiti. Dan Cohen in Washington for us. Thank you for this breaking news. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. So unbelievable. We've been, covering this now for many, many months, as they have already put the, boots on the ground. So now we can confirm, U.S. Special Forces in Haiti, actively involved in this operation. So there you have it. The forward operating group inside of Haiti. We've got
with
more.
What weapons, I wonder, because the Pentagon today said we're running so low on everything because we've given it all to Ukraine. So I guess, there's always more in the tank.
They brought their guns from home.
Right.
Special Forces guys, just grab your guns out of your closet. We need you guys to go down to Haiti. We need you for an assassination. So hey, hop to it, guys. That's America right now. Where will we invade next? All right, we've got more news to get to here on your Monday. Will Donald Trump get a fair trial? Let us know in the comments below. Donald Trump in court today. I mean, he's got how many now indictments piled on him? Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, was literally asked in Congress, do you think that Republicans and Democrats are treated the same under the law? And he said, yes, there's not one rule for Democrats and one rule for Republicans. He said that with a straight face. Merrick Garland did. Also, we're looking at Serbia tonight and what is going on in Kosovo, as Serbians who live in that area, of course, basically forcing themselves to defend themselves now because of NATO meddling. Is NATO about to have a repeat of 1999 and creating another war in that country? We will get our perspective from Belgrade tonight as we look more closely at the war in coming potential war in Serbia.
That's right.
But first, we want to tell you about our friends. Over at Take Lean, which Brick House, our friends over at Brick House. Now, you've heard about those weight loss injections that produce incredibly fast results, right? Well, they work by lowering glucose, reducing fat, and curbing appetite. Now, if your goal is weight loss, but you're not into shots, a group of doctors created something remarkable. It's a new weight loss supplement called Lean, and here's why it's so encouraging. The study ingredients in Lean have been shown to help maintain healthy glucose levels, help burn fat by converting fat to energy, energy and then reducing your appetite. Now, if you struggle to lose weight, healthy glucose levels, burning fat, and eating less are 3 keys to doing that. Adding lean to a healthy diet and exercise program could be a game changer for you. Let's get you started right now with 15% off and free rush shipping. Visit takelean.com and enter the code REDACTED. That's promo code REDACTED when you go to takelean.com. Someone in the chat a few minutes ago said, wait a minute, you guys have ads in your live show? Yes, we do. You know why? Because we are not controlled by Blackrock. We are not supported by billionaires. We literally have a few sponsors that keep the lights on here. And so if you are interested in a product that you see that supports independent journalism, then take advantage of it and get 15% off. And just be thankful that we're not controlled by biopharmaceutical companies and all of those types of things like Blackrock. So go to takelean.com, get 15% off and free rush shipping. And we really want to thank Brickhouse for supporting independent journalism. And I have to point out, too, the statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. It's not a substitute or alternative for care from a health care provider. They always have to put in that disclaimer, of course. Anyway, go to takelean.com, get 15% off and free rush shipping.
Donald Trump's civil trial starts today in New York. This is the case where the Attorney General, Letitia James, has accused the former president and his sons of fraud for inflating assets. But is he getting a fair trial? He says he's not, but let's ask a legal expert about this. Joining me today is Lionel from Lionel Nation on YouTube. He's a legal and media analyst. And I want to ask you about this, not just because it's timely, but also because I have so many questions. Well, about a couple of things. One, does this mean a loss of his assets? And two, is he actually getting a fair trial? So let's start with that. Do you think, what is your overall impression of this case?
Well, first of all, great questions. Number one, is he getting a fair trial? I have no idea what that means. I've never seen, I don't know what a fair trial means. Let's look at it this way. One of the things which is important is to ask yourself, how many people similarly face these types of cases? None.
Okay.
None.
What do you mean? So, just for cases about inflating assets? Because usually that's an IRS issue?
Well, a couple of things too. First and foremost, as anybody in business will tell you, one of the aspects of inflating assets, which is interesting, is that whenever you list something as a particular asset price, it's going to go to the financial department of either a bank or a lending institution for due diligence. So you could say it's $20 billion. They're going to say, no, it's not. So it's not like you put down, $1 billion and somebody's going to act upon that, act negatively. The issue is, does the statute require you to deliberately intend to defraud, be duplicitous? Is that the standard? Or does and this is where we get into kind of the shady, when you take into account the notion of business practices. Let's say, for example, you're selling your show. You're telling people about how great it is, the number of viewers, the popularity. There's a degree of fudging. And in contract law, we call it puffery. All the time of year. This is the best pizza in the world. I know that's a small level. At its worst, if Donald Trump is found to be liable and the Trump organization, his entire organization could go into a receivership. He could be locked out of his business. A law firm or somebody would be asked to run something they know nothing about. One judge, in a very interesting, almost like a summary judgment or a preliminary finding, said that, oh, listen, by the way, there's fraud. And let's just go to damages. It's like, wait a minute. He and you must have heard about this. He suggested that Mar-a-Lago was worth about, $18 million. The front door is worth $18 million. Rush Limbaugh's house down the street's a couple $100 million, and that's just a regular house. So is it fair? I would say no. Is it unfair enough to either cause the procedure to stop or to guarantee a reversal? Not yet. They're doing some interlocutory appeals, some preliminary appeals to find out whether this even goes through. But so there is the legal part of it. That's one thing. How is he going to handle this? What about his countenance? Let me ask you a question. Publicity. A fair trial. There's a great case, Michigan against Tucker. It's a classic. It says a defendant is entitled to a fair trial, not a perfect one. I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means. But what is happening, and we'll talk about maybe about the political implications of this, but from the legal parts of it, it's unheard of. The fact that this somehow could not be disposed of prior. And when you have the attorney general who basically said, I'm going to go after him. This is before anything even happened.
So, okay, those are two interesting questions. I want to talk about this sanctioning of his lawyers, because in the opinion that was released last week, his lawyers were fined $7,500 each for engaging in repetitive, frivolous arguments. Now, I found that to be a little bit of a scary precedent for all litigators, because you always want to appeal. Everyone appeals. Right. And so is it that they're trying to scare lawyers away from representing Trump?
Yes. The 65 have you heard about the 65 project?
No.
The 65 project, you can go and read about this. This is you go to 65project.com or whatever it's called. But it's called a bipartisan effort to protect democracy from abuse of the legal system. It says the 65 Project, 65project.com, the65project.com. It's a bipartisan effort to protect democracy from these once and future abuses by holding accountable big lie lawyers who bring fraudulent and malicious lawsuits to overturn legitimate election results, and by working with bar associations to deter future abuses by establishing clear standards for conduct that punish lies about the conduct or results of elections. So let's say, for example, you have the audacity to pursue a case in support of Donald Trump. You have issues you want to litigate. The 65 Project or someone else decides, we find this a priori to be specious. We're going to go to your local bar association, file some type of preliminary accusation of fraud or what have you. If you want to appear pro hoc vice, meaning in another jurisdiction temporarily, where you use your admission to one bar association as kind of like an entree for special limited appearance elsewhere, that can hold you up because you have pending disciplinary actions against you. It's meant to intimidate, to scare. And one of the things which you don't do is to initially anticipate something being frivolous when nobody's heard it. Frivolous.
Well, right. So my question is that court systems are full of frivolous crap, for lack of a better word.
From who? Right. But from you. Let me give you an example.
But you get the chance to prove it. We should get the chance to prove it, right? And so is this acting as a form of legal censorship in the way that the word disinformation acts as a form of censorship and enacts punishment for wrongthink?
Well, let me give you an example, just very, very quickly. There was a case years ago of this great Florida lawyer. I'm from originally, and he was charged with fishing without a license. Make a long story short, it was a mullet he was catching, and his lawyer looked at that and said, a fish is something that doesn't have a gizzard, and brought an ichthyologist in. Make a long story short, he had the case dismissed. Now, what some people would call frivolous, they would say that's brilliant lawyering. You sometimes look at something and somebody would say, I had one of my great moments of legal victory. I represented somebody, I don't know why. It was a nonsense case, but I happened to read the statute. And it says it's unlawful to throw broken glass. I don't know why. It's got to be broken already. She threw a bottle. It was nothing. But I said, I would like to try this. They looked at me like I was on a memo. Again, it was insane, but I thought it was good lawyering. I was using the language. They have the statute. It's their burden. If somebody sues you for something, They've got to prove the case against you. And if you come up with a viable defense, and by the way, if you do come up with something that's specious, a non-justiciable issue, something that is clearly in bad faith, there are sanctions, but I would at least like to hear it first versus, again, this a priori predetermination that what you must be saying is wrong, because we all know the 2020 election was without any fraud, and only some unscrupulous lawyer would have the audacity to do this. It's like, wait a minute. Here's my other problem. Not to become too fiery about this. Where are the judges? Where are the lawyers? Where are the bar associations? Where's the ACLU? Where are my brothers and sisters of the bar who would say, wait a minute, you can't do this? But because it's Trump, something turns off.
Right.
You mentioned Trump. And this weird, you have to say, well, what are you, some kind of a Trump apologist? No.
It shouldn't matter. We should equally want him to have a fair trial. It's good for everybody for him to have a fair trial and the right to fair representation, right? And so you would think that this would ripple throughout the legal community and say, oh, shoot, if we're going to be acting in a way that they don't like, we're going to lose money. That is, I don't know how to explain that.
There's also the chance where you're weaponizing the courts. You're doing a lot of things ahead of time that are designed or seemingly designed to do everything in their power to make him unable to stand as a candidate. Let me throw one at you too, which is even more interesting. I think these are the people who come up with the idea that they're going to suggest that he, by virtue of some 14th Amendment argument, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, that he is he's unable to sit or to appear in a ballot because he committed insurrection. Okay, you got that one? Great.
Yes.
Now, that is clearly absolutely ridiculous. Some people would say that under the 14th Amendment, you have to be, you cannot be an elected official, but an officer. Okay, aside from that, let's just forget that for the moment. If he were to turn around and say, all right, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say that under the 14th Amendment, not only did Joe Biden may not have been involved specifically in insurrection, but he gave aid and comfort to an enemy, China. So I'm going to take his name off the ballot. Let's assume further that for whatever it's worth, a couple of states knock them off the ballot. Mm-hmm. Now neither party can get the 270 electoral votes, and it goes into the House for the vote. And each state has a vote per delegation. If Trump gets 26 votes, he's the president. So do you really want to do this? That would be phenomenal. And so they're doing, remember, this is the same president too, where they went after him with the emoluments clause, which most people don't understand. They impeached him twice. They are indefatigable. The Republican Party, the most absolutely imprisoned bunch of do-nothings. They're slow and they ring their beads and they seem upset. They're worthless. Democrats, you got to hand it to them. They work all angles.
Yeah, that's yeah. Precisely. Let's circle back around to the Attorney General, because she's kind of dunking right now on Twitter or X, saying, we are now, she's I don't want to say bragging, but she's bragging about going after Trump in advance of this trial. But Absolutely. She is an elected official. And so we could see this as campaigning. We see other attorney generals sort of, talking about their wins in order to continue to be elected. So I don't know if that is a fair thing to say, that she shouldn't be dragging out her wins.
No, because what she's doing, yes, she's an elected official, but she is her duty is justice. District attorneys are elected officials. You should never say anything. You should let the court be the official tribunal, not the Twitter space, Twitterverse, whatever it is. That in some respects, that might be subject to her own disciplinary action. You don't want to do anything to perhaps infect the sanctity, you would hope, of the trial. Let me give you another example.
Well, before you do, though, let me just,
Sure.
Because then it just might be a war of social media, because then she's dunking on social media. And so is former President Trump. Just hours ago, he said, I arrived at this courthouse to fight a corrupt and racist attorney general. So the judge is Trump hating judge. So Then can we say both sides are validating this? Silence is golden.
No, because they also Jack Smith wants to gag him. No, I would venture to say, I'm sorry, she has a duty. A prosecutor has a duty, of which I was one. A prosecutor has a duty. You represent the state of New York, the people of the United States. Your job is I don't want to say not sanctimonious. It's pure. It's special. As a defendant, you should be able to use everything in your power to let people know, up to and asking people to appear at the courthouse. If you are the ones on trial for that, you should be able to speak. You know, this idea, and it's a fascinating issue because people have always, we used to years ago have this idea of change of venue. The idea that if something was so bad, if the publicity was so bad that there'll be a change of venue. The Sam Shepard case was an example of that. Murph the Surf years ago. Well, now there's no place you're going to go where you're not the subject. Trump knows how to use that. But here is the thing. The rules are different. Her job is specifically to seek justice, not a conviction. That's not why you do it. It's to bring this, to say that the people of New York have been aggrieved. And I'm going to use this tribunal to put on my case, best upon the ability. I believe in this case, it's warranted. By the way, at least this is a little bit more understandable compared to the first case that DA Alvin Bragg brought, which I still don't understand. The misapplication of business, so nobody gets that one. So the president, he is being bombarded. I believe you should always err on the side of a defendant's right of publicity because, many people said years ago, there was a great lawyer, Ellis Rubin, who said that law schools should teach electronic advocacy, that not only do you have to do well in the courtroom, but you've got to be able to explain to people, this is what's going on. From the Scopes monkey trial to name it, to the Lindbergh kidnapping, OJ. To me, there's a perfect melding, but you always err on the side of the defendant, not the state. That's a different story completely. And how he's able to maintain his composure and how he is able. And let me ask you this.
Wait, are we saying Donald Trump has maintained his composure?
No. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's going to be able to sit, how he has in the E. Jean Carroll case, he wasn't there. That's a bad message. I'm sorry. But you have to almost spend time teaching a defendant, your client, don't roll your eyes, don't talk to me. The jury is going to be watching every single move you make. How do you handle this? The jury comes out, you stand up, you sit down. How are you going to show deference? This is the first. Some of these people might be starstruck, because remember, these are human beings. These are people they've never been to anything like this. This is a chance of a lifetime. And sometimes Trump has gotten himself into more trouble by what he said. When you're on charge for sexual battery, what he said about E. Jean Carroll, I'm sorry, was ridiculous. To make fun of, appearances and that sort of thing. And that's his problem. Maybe, put it this way, if they were smart, they would say, no, Mr. Trump, please go. By all means, go. Make him look like a madman. Make him look like a lunatic. You maintain the composure. Let him decide how to handle this. Can people keep track of by the way, 4 indictments? Was it 91, 90, whatever counts of this? And isn't it amazing to you how politically this is inuring to his benefit?
Yes.
They love him. Did you ever think you'd see this?
No. No.
Don't wait so long to answer next time. It's like it's a parallel universe. It's like quantum mechanics. There's this world that applies to you and me. We'd be sunk. But it's Nietzsche on steroids. It doesn't make him stronger. It makes him different. And I'm telling you, and if we can go a little bit political, just so that you understand this.
Well, I think the point that we've made is that it's political because his circumstances are different and irregular, and we can't explain it any other way. So
everything's political.
Yes,
everything's political. When you have an appointed or anybody who's running for office, yes. Listen, certain things are political. There's no way around it. I'm sorry, that's just human nature. But the thing about it is that the courts themselves right now are under such attack and have been for the longest time because people really don't understand how it works. They think this is the way it's supposed to be. Ideally, you would want to be able to have the most sedate and quiet defendant theoretically in real life, unless it's Trump. There were people alleged to be heads of the mafia who showed up. You never even heard of them. And they just slipped out. They were so quiet that when the prosecutor lost or when the prosecutor made a deal, they felt good because nobody will know about this because nobody's heard about, Sam, the Gugutsa, nobody heard about it. With Trump, he basically says, come on. And then when he's convicted, he says, well, there you go. See what happens? I can't get a fair trial. They just want me off the ballot. And you know what? He's right. He's absolutely correct.
Yes, just today, the Attorney General, James, posted this timeline of the trial or the investigation saying we started in March 2019 and sued him in September of 2022. So she's making the case, oh, no, this is an appropriate timeline, has nothing to do with the election. I don't know, we don't know how long her investigations normally last or anything of the sort. So the timing, yes, is a linchpin here. So I appreciate you breaking these things down for us in such a sort of fun and lighthearted way. It's been a pleasure to talk to you here on Redacted. So if you want more of Lionel's analysis, go to Lionel Nation on YouTube. You can like and subscribe to his channel. It was a pleasure talking to you. Please come back and break this down for us more as this unfolds.
I would be honored. Thank you so very much.
I loved Lionel. Thank you so much, Lionel.
Yeah.
I know I get to sit here and watch the chat during that, watching the interview, and so many people said, I love this. And someone said in the chat, if anyone understands lawyering, love this dude. Tremble Dust says, love this dude. If you work with lawyers, he is the prototypical old school attorney. Yes, who's thoughtful and really dives into the language of the law. And I love that. His discussion about the broken glass. And no, she didn't throw broken glass. She threw a bottle, which was glass, and then it became broken after it. I love that. But anyway, I think his assessment of it is spot on. So will Trump get a fair trial? It was amazing to see today because they had the cameras there. They absolutely wanted the cameras there. We can't have cameras with Ghislaine Maxwell. We can't have the cameras when Ghislaine Maxwell is there, right? But when Trump is there, sure, let's get the cameras in there. Let's get right up on his face. It's all a marketing ploy for Letitia James, of course,
right?
For political reasons.
Absolutely, that's the case. So we will follow this. I appreciate that you like that guest so much, because guess what the audience, our Redacted audience, usually doesn't like is when I show screenshots of legal filings. So that was better.
Oh man, just anytime you're putting together a story and you're like, I've got 15 pages of legal stuff. Maybe I should just call Lionel and see if he's available.
Yeah, that was maybe a better
Lionel,
a better way to go
available
about
because
that.
I'm about to show a lot of documents.
She's about to bring her PDFs, and Redacted audience doesn't love that all the time. We can have a little bit of both, but okay. So yes, that guest, it was first time Redacted guest. Hopefully not the last, because that was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Lionel. We really appreciate it. All right, we've got more news to get to here on your Monday. It is Monday, holy smokes. And we're going to talk about NATO in Kosovo and what are they doing to destabilize Serbia. Yes, we're going to dive deeply into this question. Many of you have been asking about this. This is a really important story. Will Russia get involved? Will Vladimir Putin, if called upon, come in and intercede? Will this be the next front in the war, Serbia? We hope that that's not the case, but it seems like NATO is really itching to return to 1999, where they bombed and terrorized the people of Serbia. So we'll get there. But first,
we're going to tell you, first two things before we run the ad. I want to respond to everybody who is a longtime Redacted viewer and always comments on this shirt. This is the B shirt. We get that a lot. And some people are saying, did I do it because of RBs? No, we had an attack of invasive Asian hornets. So I just wanted to bring you that update because all of our bees were attacked and gone. And it's a terrible story. And I'm happy to talk with you about it on Twitter but the chat room is mentioning it often. And thanks for bringing up the B shirt.
Yes,
okay.
They love the B shirt.
Had to. There's so many comments about the B shirt that I just had to. Okay. Now we will talk about our friends over at Aura, because are you tired of constantly receiving spam phone calls to the point where you don't even answer your phone? You know how that happens? It happens because data brokers make a fortune selling your information to robocallers, spammers, and others who want to learn more about you, like where you live, what you like, what your buying patterns are, because you are just an avatar on the internet that they see as a potential for money. So our friends over at Aura can identify data brokers exposing your info and submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Brokers are legally required to remove your information if you ask them to, but that is an arduous task that maybe you don't want to do on your own. So Aura is a sponsor of this show, and we would like you to, again, we talk about how the sponsors today who are sponsoring independent media are the ones that you should be looking at first. So that's why we encourage you to check out Aura's services, because maybe they can help you not only support Redacted, but support yourself, support your online safety, and get your information removed from these lists that you don't want. So let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online so you can focus on other tasks. You can stop data brokers from exposing your information by going to our link, aura.com/redacted. You get a 14-day trial for free, and you can see where your personal information is showing up and where it's been compromised. Plus, you sign up for this as a service, so then when they detect something that maybe they didn't detect in the first scan, you're gonna get notices about it. So give them a try. Again, it's a 14-day trial for free. Protect yourself from America's fastest growing crime, which is data theft. Again, aura.com/redacted is the place to go. I'll say it just one more time, aura.com/redacted.
Well, is NATO helping or terrorizing Serbia? Violence breaking out overnight in northern Kosovo at the hands of NATO peacekeepers, helping as NATO peacekeepers. Why is NATO provoking Serbia and meddling in Kosovo? A few months ago, the head of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, warned that NATO troops would, quote, take all necessary actions to maintain a safe and secure environment for all citizens in Kosovo. So are things coming to a boiling point? Let's ask Alexander Pavic, who's an independent journalist, joining us from capital of Serbia, Belgrade, today. Alexander, great to have you back on the show. Welcome back.
Thanks, Clayton. It's always nice to be with you, and thanks for always covering things, especially when crises occur here, and there are many of them.
Yeah, sadly, what's unfolding in Serbia maybe is getting less attention than other parts of the world right now, but no less important. So overnight, we saw a new round of violence breaking out. Largely, I guess, can you talk about the NATO involvement? Why the heck is NATO there in the first in the first place? And being labeled peacekeepers is kind of a laughable bit of nomenclature, is it not?
Yeah. Yeah, well, basically, this all started in 1999 when NATO illegally and unilaterally bombed Serbia at the time. Serbia and Montenegro together. They formed one state at the time, was called the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, without any sort of a resolution on the part of the UN Security Council. That came later. That came after 78 days of bombing. They bombed mostly, they bombed pretty much, they tried to bomb military targets, but they wound up bombing a lot of civilian infrastructure. And there were estimates that, the damages is close to about $100 billion. Of course, they haven't paid a cent of it back. Anyway, at the end of this illegal bombing, there came out a resolution of the UN Security Council called Resolution 1244. And it called for a massive peacekeeping mission headed by NATO, who's numbering about 50,000 soldiers at the start. And according to this resolution, NATO was supposed to keep the peace there until a mutually agreed a settlement could be reached, a mutually agreed. Well, ever since NATO came, and all the Western bureaucrats, running this peacekeeping organization, what happened was that they started actually helping the Kosovo Albanians who had equal status in Serbia. They started actually helping them in state formation, on the part of an autonomous province of Serbia called Kosovo and Metohija. And it's because there were no really successful peace negotiations that took place. In 2008, what happened was that some of these Kosovo Albanian leaders got together in February 2008. They proclaimed independence. And what happened next? All the major Western powers recognized the independence of so-called Kosovo, which was declared unilaterally in 2008. This was an absolute violation of UN Resolution 1244. They pressured a lot of other countries to recognize Kosovo. So we have about almost a half of the countries that form the UN today recognizing Kosovo, mostly under pressure. Serbia refuses to recognize this unilateral secession, of course, and it keeps insisting on the respect for Resolution 1244. But what they're doing is now, for the past couple of years, actually, NATO has been helping so-called Kosovo build an army, which is a total violation of Resolution 1244. They have NATO instructors. In fact, they're now trying to include them in a peacekeeping mission to give them legitimacy. All the while, we have, on the other hand, the US is leading these efforts. On the other hand, we have the EU, which brokered an agreement, they call it normalization. This is in April 2013, the so-called Brussels Agreement, on the basis of which this was signed by both Belgrade and the local authorities in Pristina, which is the capital of so-called Kosovo. And basically what that entailed was that Belgrade made a big concession. They actually agreed to integrate Serbian police in the majority north region of Kosovo into these structures of so-called Kosovo, police and judicial authorities. But in return, what was supposed to happen was that so-called Kosovo was supposed to establish this association of Serbian majority Serbian municipalities as a kind of a way to protect the rights and freedom of the Serbs remaining in Kosovo, who are in Kosovo itself minority, even though in Serbia as a whole, the Albanians are a clear minority. But anyway, so what's been happening for the past 10 years is Serbia unilaterally disbanded its own institutions in Kosovo. They did their part of the Brussels Agreement. On the other hand, the Kosovo Albanian side, with clear Western support, did not fulfill a single part of its part of the agreement, meaning there is no association of Serbian municipalities. So what we have is, and the Serbian authorities made a big mistake. They actually disarmed the Serbian population in the north, expecting that the West would do its part, which was pretty naive. We can see that now. The West didn't do its part, but rather armed the Kosovo Albanians. What happened, and the last act of this tragedy was about 3 years ago, this present prime minister of so-called Kosovo, Albin Kurti, came to power. He's an Albanian extremist. He obviously wants to ethnically cleanse Kosovo. So he's instituted this reign of terror, especially for the past year. And this is arbitrary arrests, confiscations of property, including vehicles, houses. Preventing people from Serbia proper to enter Kosovo, etc., setting up roadblocks, breaking into people's houses with no warrants. So obviously, because the West and the NATO haven't done anything, it seems that some local Serbs started to self-organize.
I wanted to ask you about that. So they started to self-organize. Those local Serbs started to self-organize to defend themselves. Because what choice do they have, right, but to defend themselves against this? And how, in the U.S. and the EU, what are they doing to help those self-organized Serbs? The exact opposite. They're instigating, using NATO, right, to basically bully them.
Well, absolutely. After this, about a week ago, we had this huge incident near a 14th century monastery, Serbian Orthodox monastery in the north of Kosovo, where several hundred so-called Kosovo police, special police forces encircled maybe, they say about 30 guys, Serbian guys in uniform. And they killed 3 of them. They arrested several of them. The others managed to escape into Serbia proper. So what happened? What happened was that NATO and the EU and the US State Department, they all supported the actions of the Kosovo Special Forces. That's what they did. So they said, oh yeah, they were acting within their legal rights, to defend the territory and sovereignty of their state, which of course Serbia and most of the countries in the world don't recognize. So that's the help, quote unquote, that NATO is giving.
Are we at a boiling point right now, do you think, Alexander? I mean, are we? NATO wants this. NATO wants this instability. They want to control Kosovo, a Western-backed position there. So do you think we're heading for a repeat of 1999 and maybe a larger war?
Well, I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel because the West obviously doesn't want to put any pressure on their own local favorites. It's the same. It's very similar to what's happening in Ukraine, in the sense that once the U.S. needs you for something, for their geopolitical goals, you can do no wrong. You can be a Nazi. It doesn't matter. So on the other hand, what can Serbia do? There's no Serbian leader willing or ready to recognize so-called Kosovo, which is what the West wants. And the other thing that the West wants, which is a really, really a thorn in their side, is another thing, and this is absolutely connected to Western behavior. Serbia has refused to join sanctions against Russia ever since the war in Ukraine started more than a year and a half ago. And it's huge diplomatic pressure on the Serbian government in Belgrade to join the West in instituting sanctions. And of course, the government is refusing because all the polls show in Serbia, 80% of the people in Serbia are against sanctions against Russia. So that would be a no-go. No government could survive that. So that's another reason why they're using, actually, it's obvious that the NATO is using armed Albanians who are actually open about being inspired by the so-called KLA, which was the Kosovo Liberation Army, a terrorist organization which was active in Kosovo in 1998, 1999, provoking the Serbian armed forces to react so that they could, cause NATO to bomb Serbia, and they did that. So again, Serbia has no choice. They have to do something to defend their people. They can't let ethnic cleansing take place. On the other hand, NATO's, of course, they said that they will be ready to react should Serbian armed forces enter so-called Kosovo. So I don't see any way out of this. Something's going to have to break somewhere. I don't see this Kosovo Albanian side ready to make any concessions. I don't see Brussels or Washington or London willing to make any concessions. So I don't see this crisis subsiding.
Tragic. And of course, we're all watching it unfold right now. I'll get you out of here on this, Alexander, which is where the government of Serbia, where does the Vučić government go from here? Are they willing to take a hard line against this? Will they ask for sort of Russian intervention to help with this? Where do you think the Vučić government will go?
for the past year and a half, Vucic used to visit. I think he bragged himself that he's met with Putin 17 times before the war in Ukraine. Ever since the war in Ukraine, he hasn't called him, and he's even said it openly that he hasn't called him, he hasn't seen him. Last year, we had the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. He had a scheduled visit to Serbia. I think it was early last summer, 2022. So what happened? None of the countries around us gave overflight permission, so his plane couldn't actually come to Serbia because he couldn't get permission to fly over the surrounding countries. So, that's the kind of situation that we're in. On the other hand, Vucic, he's done everything to turn toward the West. He's practically only talked to the West over the past year or so regarding Kosovo especially, but he has nothing to show for it. So if he has the courage, what can he do but ask for help from Russia? I don't know, though, if he has the courage to do it. We've had various voices, official voices from Russia over the past months saying that if Serbia asked for help, that Russia would help. But so far, we have no actual requests from Serbia for Russian help. I don't know how long they can hold out without, people in Serbia becoming unhappy and saying, well, look, we need help from someone. Either that or, we go to war again and see what happens, because, talking to the West is not doing us any good. We're losing people, we're losing time, we're losing territory, and nothing is being done in good faith. Even when you make an agreement with Western help, actually, with Western guarantees, they mean nothing because the West doesn't enforce the agreement that they themselves created. So it's a very difficult situation. And I think Serbia has already been destabilized because of this. We may have early elections, maybe December, maybe March. So that's what we have. And I think pro-Russian and anti-Western sentiment in Serbia continues to rise. So I think we're in for kind of a perfect storm here. I just want to add, at the same time, the Western powers, I'm talking about the EU, I'm talking about the US, NATO, they are pressuring the Serbs in Bosnia and Herzegovina pretty much to, agree to all Western pressure, pretty much cut ties with Serbia, accept, centralized Bosnia with Bosnian Muslim domination, which is a violation of the Dayton Peace Agreement from 1995, which the U.S. brokered. So, this is not just Kosovo. These are, we have Montenegro, the south of Serbia, which used to form the same state until 2006. We literally have Western ambassadors there pressuring the new. There were elections recently. They can't form a government. Why? Because the Western embassies are insisting that the government can only be formed on the part of parties or individuals that support NATO and that are for sanctions against Russia and for recognition of Kosovo. So this whole region is a mess because of outside meddling.
Right. So what is taking them so long to call on Russia for some help? Because they're not going to get it from the United States, the EU, and NATO. NATO is the one, of course, causing this and fomenting this chaos right now in order to destabilize this region and in order for the Western powers to take hold as some sort of a bulwark against China and against Russia in that region. Absolutely fascinating and terrifying. And we want to make sure that we're on top of this story and covering it here, Alexander, because I think it's not getting really any coverage in the Western press. And thank you so much for shining a light on this. And we are really at a scary tipping point moment right now. We're going to keep our eye on what happens over the next few days there within the higher government ranks. Alexander Pavic, thank you so much for joining us. As always, thanks for your insight.
Thanks very much for giving me the time and the space to explain things, Clayton. As always, you're one of the last remaining flickering lights of press freedom in the West. So keep up the great work.
And thanks so much, Alexander. We really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for being a part of our show. We really appreciate it. You know, the show is totally free. You don't have to spend a penny on this show, whether you're watching us on Rumble, on YouTube. The only thing that we ask is that you hit the subscribe button and smash that like button. It's totally free, but it totally helps the show. So thank you guys so much for supporting what we do here on Redacted. Thanks to all of you from around the world who watch us on a regular basis. We really appreciate it. And it's because of you that we're able to keep doing this show. Seeking independent voices out there, independent journalists like Alexander and Dan, and so many great people that we're able to have here on the show. So thank you guys for all of your support. We'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, everyone, have a great night.